Perfect. Thank you so much, Veronica, for the introduction, and thank you for everybody that joined. The presentation is going to be in English, but Veronica is going to make sure to also give you some of these slides in Spanish later on. So as Veronica said, I've been a sustainability consultant for a couple of years now and working with Veronica on many different projects. I come from Italy, but I studied in the UK and worked there. But also I worked on different projects around Europe. And currently I'm working in Spain in a number of different cities like Seville, Valencia, Alicante, and Madrid. So I'm very excited to give you today a little bit of a presentation on CSRD and different other alignment that you might want to consider while trying to navigate this new regulation that came out and will probably affect you in the near future if it doesn't already. I'm just gonna go straight into the agenda. I'm going to start with a little bit of an overview just to understand what CSRD is and just when it might be relevant for you. And going through after a little bit of the requirements of the CSRD and some steps that you might take for easier implementation in your business, as well as highlighting some mistakes that can be done and can be avoided to make everything, the whole process smoother and easier. The Corporate Sustainability and Reporting Directive, so the CSRDs, was formally adopted in 2022 and entered into force in 2024. So while in 2024, only large listed company had to comply that had to previously comply with the non-financial reporting directive, so the NFRD had to report also for CSRD. This year, 2025, all large companies that meet out of the three of the criteria that you can see on the screen have to comply with CSRD requirements. And this is around 50,000 companies currently. So while the first wave basically was of company will publish their reports this year, so in 2025, in relation to 2024 information, and we started to see some of their reports being published because generally they are published kind of like in the middle of the year. Then the second wave of companies, which is most of the companies, will have to publish their reports in 2026 in relation to the information of 2025. So any data that you collect this year. So the 2 out of 3 criteria are either more than 40 million turnover, 20 million of asset under management, or basically 250 plus employees. So what does the CSRD really require? The main requirement is to report on the ESRS, the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, and we'll go through that in a little while. So these standards detail the rules and the requirement for the companies to report on sustainability impacts, opportunities, risks, and they basically form a key part of the CSRD reporting. The other main requirements are the double materiality assessment, which includes both impact and financial materiality. And I will also explain you a little bit of the difference between these two, because it can cause sometimes a little bit of confusion on what this means. And this is a fundamental point of the compliance, as the double materiality assessment will inform which of the ESRS topics apply to your company. And then finally, the outcome is basically an integrated report, which can be included as part of an existing management report that you might already publish in your company, or a sustainability report. as long as it's externally assured. And we'll also touch on this part of the assurance, which is a new kind of topic in the CSRD. So the ESRS standards are divided in two. The cross-cutting standards, which are the general standards, basically, that you can see here in the screen in green, and topical standards, which are the environment, social, and governance standards. The difference between the two is mainly that the general standards are mandatory. So they cover the principle on how and what to report on, and some general disclosures on governance, strategy, impact risk, and also opportunity. The ESG standards, instead, are not mandatory, but they will depend on the double materiality assessment that you undertake. And that's why the double materiality is so important. In fact, companies will only have to report for CSRD on what they have assessed as material, either in terms of financial or impact. And the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group is the group that put together these standards. And they have published over 1,000 data points, which is different data that you might share because material for your company. Not everything will be relevant for your company. And that is why starting with a double materiality assessment is the first step to ensure CSRD compliance. Here we see a little bit of a graph of the double materiality. So double materiality is a concept which provides the criteria for determination of whether a sustainability matter must be included in a company sustainability report or not. So going through a double materiality assessment is the first step for compliance, because this exercise will highlight what are the sustainability material aspects that apply to your specific business. And they divide basically in two. So financial materiality, as you can see from the graph, is an inside-out perspective. So you need to consider all of the external impact that could affect the company future profitability. This could be ecological diversity, global warming impact on cash flow, or, for example, on return on investment and profitability. Sorry, this is an outside-in perspective. So what is the outside world impact on your financial materiality? Instead, impact materiality, you need to, for impact materiality, you consider inside out. So you consider all the external impact that the operation of the company could have on society and the environment. So your impact to the world, for example, GHG emissions or air quality impact. And these two are connected together, obviously, because sometimes things can cross over and sometimes things are either material for one aspect or the other. But for CSRD, CSRD, a sustainability matter meets the criteria of double materiality if a matter it's either one or both financial or impact materiality, which means that when you undertake your double materiality assessment, and from this assessment, you find out that a specific aspect is material just financially, for example, that already needs to be disclosed for CSRD, as well as for something that you find out that is material for both financial and impact. Assurance, it's also a new kind of topic that has been introduced by the CSRD. And the CSRD makes it mandatory for company to have an audit of sustainability information that they report on. Currently, it is required to undertake limited assurance. So limited assurance means that the engagement involves less evidence accumulation and less extensive procedures than for a standard audit. So, for example, If you're reporting on scope 1 and 2 emissions, and they are in line with previous data, you can see a trend. This is enough to comply currently. But it is probable that in the next few years, reasonable assurance will be in place for CSRD. And reasonable assurance, it's a level of assurance that where there are no material misstatements in the sustainability information that you provide and publish, and there is auditors involved that use evidence that is gathered during the audit process to provide reasonable assurance. So this will look probably more like a financial type of assurance that happens. And this is to create transparency in the information that you provide to the world. So while now limited assurance is absolutely fine to comply, this is something to think about for the next few years. So some essential steps to keep in mind in order to comply with CSRD. First one is to undertake the double materiality assessment in order to understand what is financial materiality for your company and what is impact materiality for your company. So you want to determine the relevant ESG factor out of the over 1,000 that have been published and assess the impact of business activity on sustainability matters. The second step would be, after you understand what is material for your company, you can move to data requirement definition and what data do you need to report on. So you want to establish what sustainability data is needed for your reporting and understand the scope of reporting. So for example, energy use, GHG emission, social impact, anything that is relevant for your company. It's sometimes, and we'll go through maybe the mistakes as well later, it's sometimes a waste of time to gather data that then it's not really impactful for your company in the long run. The third step is to identify what gaps you might have in your data collection, who is going to be responsible for the data collection, and perhaps what software can help you with your data collection and storage of information. So you want to decide on how and who will gather the data, identifying the roles and responsibility in your team. It's a very big exercise, so you might want to do it internally, do it externally, but it's going to require a group of people to probably do this exercise. And you want to evaluate also what existing IT infrastructure for the data management you have and what you might want to implement in the future. So there is many companies that still use Excel files to gather data, for example, which is an option, but it depends on the extent of your portfolio, how many assets do you have, and there might be other solutions that can help you making the process more automated. The fourth step would be data verification process. And this is exactly what we were just talking about. So you want to ensure that the data that you collect is reliable data, is truthful data, and is verified. So you want to outline what methods for ensuring the data accuracy and reliability you have, and prepare for an internal and external data verification. As we said before, this is not strictly required now, but preparing for it, having the trail of information ready for a future assurance, then that will be very important. And then finally, also reporting framework alignment. So ensuring that the reporting is aligned with other frameworks. Many of your companies will probably have to also align with EU taxonomy. And some of your companies might also want to align with GRESB, which gives you an overview of how you and your peers perform within a year. And these are two things that are integrated in CSRD. Therefore, if you're already taking some steps to align to EU taxonomy and GRESB, you might be on a good path to also align with CSRD and vice versa. Finally, just some common mistakes to avoid. So treating CSRD as a tick box exercise is going to be very difficult. As I went through in this presentation, it can be quite daunting at the start. Obviously, it's not once you understand the process, but it's not going to be just ticking a box. It's going to require for some kind of introspective thinking on what your company goals are, both in the short and long term, in order to succeed with the compliance. Skipping the double materiality assessment, as I touched on previously, this is a very important part because you don't want to report on information and try to collect information from various sources, your tenants, your operators, when it's not needed. You want to undertake your double materiality assessment in order to understand exactly what it's important for your business and to report solely on that. Isolating ESG from business units. This basically just means that, as we can see, there is different regulation also coming from different sides, and ESG it's becoming an integral part of businesses, and it's important that different parts of the business understand what is the ESG requirement that different projects have to comply, and that also the company as a whole needs to comply on. Underestimating data complexity. This is if you're already collecting data for your different assets, you might know that it can be difficult to gather data, and it can take a very long time. So if you haven't started collecting data yet, obviously this is a good time to start. It can be quite time consuming, so it's something to definitely take into consideration. And then how do you move forward without slowing down your business? Well, first of all, you want to try to integrate CSRD preparation into your business planning. So if you have to comply next year on 2025 data, it's important to start quite quickly because there is loads of different steps that need to be undertaken and a lot of data that need to be gathered from this year to publish then in a year time your report. Then use a phased approach. So we've talked about a lot of different things today. This is really a step-by-step process. Not everything needs to be done on day one. This can be done in little steps with a timeline that allows you and your business to get to the end point, which is going to be the 2026 reporting or the next years, with manageable steps. Position CSRD as a strategic opportunity. As we talked about as well, you're going to have to undertake a double materiality assessment, which is part of the assessment. And even if something becomes not material for your business, you will still have to report on what your thoughts were on, and why is it not applicable for your company. So this is a strategic opportunity to also understand your business, understand its goals in the short and long term, and plan ahead for the years ahead in order to position it in the best way possible for the future. And then finally, build cross-functional team. So this is going to be an exercise that involves many different people at different stages of the process. Therefore, having teams that are aware of what the process is and can be involved in also the strategic preparation of compliance, it's going to be very important. And now we're gonna just take some questions if you have some.
Thank you very much, Angela, for being here. It's been really nice to hear everything of this confusing taxation mandatory requirements that most clients are very concerned about it, because the question they ask us every day is how should we start? And I think with your presentation have given a list. We have been working in more than 200 assets all around Europe and a lot of assets in Spain. And from your perspective, which are the main things apart from the just to remember everyone, apart from the one you have just mentioned that you have to tell to someone who needs to get involved into that to comply with regulations?
Well, I would say that you probably are already expected to report on different things, and the CSRD reporting and how it's being structured, I think it's quite interesting because you're probably already complying with a lot of the requirements that the CSRD is asking for. So although it might be daunting at the beginning, you might be already on the right path. The important thing, and I think I touched on it briefly before, is trying to understand also framework alignment. What are you already doing that can help you to comply with this, or that you are already doing that you don't have to do again? Trying to make the process quite easy is to understand what steps you're already taking in order to not create more work for your business. You want to try to keep it as streamlined as possible. And the good thing with this aspect of double materiality, I think, is going to be quite good in that sense, because it's going to just make you reflect on what is your business doing and what is actually important for your business without wasting time.
You. ¿Alguien tiene alguna pregunta? Jorge.
Yeah. Angela, I would like to know what ESG trends are making the difference between market leading funds and those falling behind.
Okay, so I would say that it would obviously depend on your business, but I think certain funds that are, for example, integrating social value strategies can definitely be advantaged in some points, because it's one of the things that are asked not only by CSRD but also, for example, by GRES and by EU taxonomy. So that one is one that has been kept a little bit on the back of the mind, but it's definitely important. And also, I think very important is prioritizing a circular economy principle in your assets from the early days, as well as starting to think about net zero assets. So these are not strictly requirements, but we have already seen in the previous years how from both GRESB and EU taxonomy, this is something that it's been highlighted as these frameworks wanting to know what companies are doing. And although now it's not something necessary, let's say, for reporting reasons, it's something that is definitely making certain companies stand out if they are prepared already to demonstrate their impact rather than just their performance of their assets.
Okay, thank you.
I can think about a lot of questions, but someone else, if not, um, um, probably one thing that when you start talking with clients about it, and most clients say, "Well, I'm compliant with everything regarding sustainability. I'm having the BREEAM certification."
Mhm.
Can you give us a very highlight level explanation on the differences between having elite certification or a BREEAM certification and complying with these standards and all that? Just a high level to s- that everyone can understand it easily.
Yeah, of course. So obviously, building certification are very important to understand how your asset is performing. But in some ways, they are always going to be limited because they are based on certain parameters that are set. And from the beginning to the end, that's more like a tick box exercise in the sense that you have certain criterias to meet, so and that's what you need to do to get a certification at the end. With CSRD, for example, and also with EU taxonomy, to be fair, it's a bit more loose. It's really to understand what you can do for your business and how does it impact the environment, and how the environment might impact also your financial returns. So it's a bit more loose. It's not this tick box exercise the same as certification, and it's more broader. It looks at more things that can impact both planet and your business. So they're a bit more rounded. And the same is for GRESB, to be fair, because although it's somehow similar to a certification in the sense that you have certain criteria to undertake, it's more broad. You can really, depending on what your company decides that it's important for them, in order to impact the world around it, then that can count for GRESB, and that makes it also quite flexible and important on why different companies want to know how they are performing and how they're performing against their peers.
Okay. Thank you so much. Do anyone have more questions? We agreed to do this very, very slow, very short um, introduction on this new legislation that is going to be mandatory, is already been mandatory for many funds. And this is, we are doing some webinars to share our knowledge in the BMT learning side, and this is the one of them. And thank you so much to join us. We will share the presentation in Spanish for you to be able to understand in detail everything we've been talking about. And if you want to share your thoughts and additional queries in the future, just Angela and our team will be happy to answer them back. Thank you very much,
Exactly.
Angela, and everyone to being here.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank